Malicious compliance wife demands I give keychain to friends, so I destroyed her financial control. Give it to Jessica. She thinks it's cute and would get more use out of it than you. I stared at my wife Sarah across our kitchen table, my coffee growing cold in my hands. The keychain, a small, worn leather compass my father had given me before he died 3 years ago, sat between us like evidence in a trial. It's not going anywhere, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It was Dad's. Sarah's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the marble countertop. It's just sitting in your drawer collecting dust. Jessica mentioned it when she was over last week, and I told her you'd be happy to let her have it. It would be a nice gesture. A gesture toward what exactly? Toward being less selfish. Her tone had that edge I'd learned to recognize, the one that usually made me back down. You barely even look at it anymore. I picked up the keychain, running my thumb over the scratched brass surface. Dad had carried this thing for 20 years, through his deployment overseas, through Mom's cancer, through every important moment until the heart attack took him. I'd attached it to my keys the day after his funeral, and it had been with me every day since. Sarah, this isn't negotiable. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. Everything's negotiable in a marriage, Michael. That's how compromise works. Jessica is important to me, and what's important to me should be important to you. I wanted to ask when anything important to me had ever mattered to her, but I already knew that conversation would end with me sleeping on the couch. Again. Instead, I clipped the keychain back onto my keys with deliberate slowness. The answer is no. Sarah's face flushed red. Fine. Be stubborn. But don't come crying to me when you need something. She grabbed her purse from the counter. I'm going out with Jessica to look at that new boutique downtown. Try not to make any ridiculous purchases while I'm gone. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames in the hallway. I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at my reflection in the black coffee. Ridiculous purchases. Like the $30 lunch with my college buddy Tom last month that had triggered a 2-hour interrogation about wasteful spending. Or the book I bought without checking with her first, $15 that had somehow become evidence of my impulsive nature and lack of consideration for our financial goals. When had I started needing permission to spend my own money? When had I started asking Sarah if it was okay to meet friends for drinks? When had I become the kind of man who had to justify buying a sandwich? The keychain caught the morning light streaming through the window, and for a moment I could almost hear Dad's voice. A man who doesn't know where he's going needs to remember where he came from. I'd been going in circles for months now, maybe years. Apologizing for things that weren't wrong. Changing plans to avoid arguments. Shrinking myself down to fit into the shape Sarah wanted. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom, still on for Saturday. Haven't seen you in forever, man. I started to type back that I'd have to check with Sarah first, then stopped. My thumb hovered over the keyboard as something cold and clear settled in my chest. Maybe it was time to remember where I came from. I texted Tom back, absolutely. Looking forward to it. The simple act of not asking permission felt both liberating and terrifying. I pocketed my phone and decided to tackle some overdue bills while Sarah was out. At least paying expenses was still something I could do without getting a lecture about fiscal responsibility. I pulled up our joint checking account on my laptop, and that's when I saw it. A purchase I definitely hadn't made, $340 at Nordstrom yesterday. While I was at work. The same day Sarah had given me grief about my unnecessary protein powder purchase, $28 that I'd apparently spent without consulting her first. My fingers moved automatically, scrolling through weeks of transactions. There, another one. $180 at that upscale salon she liked. $95 at Williams-Sonoma. $220 at some boutique I'd never heard of. All purchases made while she was supposedly being careful with our money. I kept scrolling, going back months now, my coffee forgotten and growing cold. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Every time Sarah criticized my spending, my lunch with Tom, the book, a replacement phone charger, she'd made her own purchases for double or triple the amount within days. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was realizing she'd been tracking everything I bought with obsessive precision. My purchases had little notes attached in the account. M. Lunch solo, for a sandwich I'd grabbed between meetings. M. Bookstore, with a question mark, like my $15 paperback was suspicious behavior requiring investigation. My hands were shaking now. I clicked over to our savings account, the one we'd been building for the house renovation Sarah wanted. The balance was smaller than I remembered. A lot smaller. I pulled up the statements and found a transfer I'd never authorized, $3,000 moved to an account I didn't recognize just 2 weeks ago. The account number was partially visible, but the name was listed simply as S. Chen. Sarah's maiden name was Chen. My phone rang, making me jump. Sarah's contact photo, her smiling face from our honeymoon, filled the screen. Hi, I answered, trying to keep my voice normal. I need you to transfer $500 from savings to checking, she said without preamble. Jessica and I found the perfect handbags, and there's a sale ending today. I stared at the computer screen, at the evidence of her secret account, at the meticulous tracking of my every financial move while she spent freely and criticized me for buying lunch. Michael? Are you there? I'm here, I said slowly. Just checking the balance. It's fine, there's plenty in there. Just do the transfer now so I don't miss the sale. Plenty in there. Because she didn't know I discovered where $3,000 had vanished to. Sure, I heard myself say. I'll take care of it. Good. Oh, and Michael. Jessica really does love that keychain. It would mean a lot to me if you'd reconsider. We could even get you a nice new one to replace it. The compass keychain sat on the desk beside my laptop, next to the evidence that my wife had been lying to me about money for months while controlling every dollar I spent. I'll think about it, I lied. Perfect. Love you, bye. She hung up, probably already walking back into the boutique to buy her handbag with my money while expecting me to ask permission for coffee. I looked at the transfer request sitting in the browser window, then at the keychain that had somehow started this whole revelation. Dad's voice echoed in my memory, a compass doesn't just show you where you're going, son. Sometimes it shows you where you are. And I was finally starting to see exactly where that was. I closed the laptop without making the transfer. My hands were still shaking as I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, trying to process what I just discovered. The secret account. The tracking. The lies about our financial responsibility while she spent 3 times what I did without a second thought. I needed to think clearly, but my phone kept buzzing with texts from Sarah. Did you do the transfer yet? Michael, the sale ends in an hour. Hello. I ignored them and opened the laptop again, this time digging deeper into our account history. What I found made my stomach drop even further. She hadn't just been monitoring my spending, she'd been actively sabotaging it. That weekend trip to see my college friends that got accidentally double-booked with her sister's baby shower. There was a $200 spot charge on the same day, suggesting she'd known about the conflict well in advance. The concert tickets I'd bought for us that she'd suddenly decided were too expensive after I'd already purchased them. She'd bought a $300 dress that same week. Every time I tried to maintain a friendship or do something independently, there was a corresponding financial guilt trip followed by her own spending spree. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Sarah, it was my brother Jake. Hey, stranger, he said when I picked up. Mom's been asking why you haven't called. Everything okay? Jake. I'd been dodging his calls for weeks because Sarah always had something to say about my excessive phone time with my family. When had I stopped talking to my own brother? Yeah, everything's fine, I started to say automatically, then stopped. Actually, no. Everything's not fine. What's going on? I found myself telling him everything. The keychain demand, the financial monitoring, the secret account. Jake listened without interrupting, which somehow made it worse because it meant he was taking it seriously. Jesus, Mike, he said finally. How long has this been going on? I don't know. It happened gradually. I didn't realize. I rubbed my face with my free hand. I can't believe I'm just seeing this now. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, I heard Sarah's car in the driveway. She was back early. I have to go, I told Jake quickly. She's home. Mike, wait. I hung up and closed the laptop just as Sarah walked through the front door, shopping bags in hand. She looked flushed and happy until she saw my face. Did you do the transfer? She asked immediately. Not yet. Her expression shifted. Why not? I told you the sale was ending. I got distracted. Jake called. Your brother. She set down her bags with deliberate care. What did he want? There it was, that tone that suggested Jake calling me was somehow inappropriate. Like I needed permission to talk to my own family. Just checking in, I said carefully. She moved to the kitchen counter, and I noticed she'd already bought the handbag, a designer bag that probably cost twice what she'd asked me to transfer. Well, can you do the transfer now? I need to pay Jessica back for covering my half. So she'd lied about that too. The money wasn't for a sale, it was to reimburse her friend for something she'd already bought. Sure, I said, opening the laptop again. But instead of our bank's website, I found myself staring at a Google search I hadn't realized I typed, financial abuse in marriage. The first result hit me like a physical blow. Financial abuse involves controlling someone's ability to acquire, use, and maintain financial resources. Sarah appeared behind me. What's taking so long with them? She stopped mid-sentence, reading over my shoulder. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Michael, she said slowly, what exactly are you looking at? I turned to face her, and for the first time in months, I didn't immediately start apologizing or explaining myself. I found your account, Sarah. The one with $3,000 that used to be in our savings. Her face went completely white. The color drained from Sarah's face so quickly I thought she might faint. For a moment, she just stood there, mouth slightly open, looking like a deer caught in headlights. Then her expression shifted, and I watched her scramble to regain control. That's not what you think it is, she said, her voice taking on that reasonable tone she used when explaining why I was wrong about something. That money is for your birthday surprise. I was saving up to get you something really special. My birthday wasn't for another 4 months. What about all the tracking, Sarah? Every purchase I make has little notes attached to it like I'm some kind of suspect. She moved closer to the laptop, trying to see the screen. I keep track of our expenses. That's called being responsible with money, Michael. Something you might try sometime. Responsible? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. You spent $340 at Nordstrom yesterday while lecturing me about a $28 protein powder. That was a work expense, she said quickly. I needed professional clothes for the Henderson presentation. On a Saturday? She faltered for just a second. Sometimes I shop on weekends. God, Michael, do I need to clear my schedule with you now? The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I almost believed I was being unreasonable. Almost. But I'd seen the numbers. I'd seen the pattern. Show me the account, I said. What? The account with our $3,000. If it's for my birthday surprise, show me. Sarah's jaw tightened. I'm not going to ruin your surprise just because you're having some kind of paranoid episode. Paranoid episode? The words came out louder than I intended. Sarah, you've been monitoring every dollar I spend while hiding your own expenses. You've made me feel guilty for buying lunch while you drop hundreds on shopping trips. How is that not financial abuse? She laughed, actually laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Financial abuse? Really, Michael? You have access to all our accounts. You can spend money whenever you want. The fact that you're too lazy to keep track of our budget doesn't make me abusive. Too lazy to. I stood up abruptly, my chair rolling backward. I work 50 hours a week to put money into accounts you control while you criticize every purchase I make. I don't control anything. Her voice was rising now too. You're being ridiculous. And frankly, this whole conversation is exactly why I keep track of our spending, because you clearly have no idea how money works in a marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, everything okay? Call me back when you can. Sarah's eyes flicked to my phone. Let me guess, you're going to run crying to your brother now. Tell him all about how terrible your wife is. Maybe I should tell someone. Maybe I should have told someone months ago when you started making me ask permission for everything. Ask permission. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to that dangerous whisper I knew meant I was about to get the full lecture treatment. You don't ask permission, Michael. You just do whatever you want and leave me to clean up the financial mess. Like that dinner with Tom last month, $47 without checking if we had room in the budget. It was $30, and we had $1,500 in checking. $47 including tip and drinks, she corrected automatically, then seemed to realize what she'd just revealed. The silence hung between us like a blade. She'd been tracking my spending down to the exact dollar, including details I'd never told her. How do you know how much I tipped? I asked quietly. Sarah's composure finally cracked. The bank statement shows the total. The bank statement doesn't show tip breakdowns, Sarah. She turned away, heading for the kitchen. I don't have time for this paranoid nonsense. I have 3 conference calls this afternoon, and Jessica is expecting her money back. But I was already opening the laptop again, pulling up our mobile banking app. If she'd been tracking my location-based spending this obsessively, that meant she had access to more than just our joint accounts. What I found made my blood turn to ice. She'd been tracking my debit card in real time. My hands trembling, I clicked through the mobile banking app settings. There it was, buried in the account management section, real-time transaction alerts and location tracking for both our debit cards. But mine was set up differently than hers. Every single purchase I made triggered an immediate notification to her phone, complete with GPS coordinates. When I grabbed that sandwich between meetings, she'd gotten an alert the second I swiped my card, telling her exactly which deli, how much I spent, and what time. When I bought gas last Tuesday. Another ping with my precise location. But her card? No alerts to my phone. Nothing. Sarah, I called out, my voice hollow. Why does your debit card send me no notifications, but mine sends you everything? She appeared in the doorway, that designer handbag still clutched in her hands. What are you talking about? I turned the laptop screen toward her. Real-time tracking. Location services. You've been getting alerts every time I spend $1. That's for security, she stammered. In case your card gets stolen. Then why isn't your card set up the same way? I don't need, she stopped herself, realizing she was about to admit that she didn't need monitoring because she wasn't the one being watched. My phone rang. Jake again. This time, Sarah moved quickly across the room and actually reached for it. Don't answer that, she said sharply. Excuse me. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown, and calling your brother is just going to make things worse. Jake never liked me anyway. That was news to me. Jake had always been polite to Sarah, even when I could tell he had reservations. But now I wondered what he'd seen that I'd missed. I answered the call anyway. Mike, I've been thinking about what you told me, Jake said without preamble. This stuff with Sarah, it's not normal, man. Lisa and I don't track each other like that. Sarah's face flushed red. She could obviously hear Jake through the speaker. Jake, I can't really talk right now. Yes, you can, Jake interrupted. You're a grown man in your own house. When's the last time you made a decision without checking with her first? The question hit me like a slap. When was the last time? I couldn't remember. Sarah grabbed for the phone. Give me that. I want to talk to your brother about his accusations. No. I pulled the phone away, and something shifted inside me. Jake, can I call you back in a few minutes? Sure, but Mike. Don't let her convince you this is normal. What you described isn't marriage, it's surveillance. I hung up, and Sarah immediately launched into damage control mode. Your brother doesn't understand our relationship, she said, her voice taking on that syrupy sweetness she used when she wanted something. He's never been supportive of us. Remember when we got engaged? He made all those comments about rushing into things. I did remember that. Jake had suggested a longer engagement, more time to really get to know each other. At the time, I thought he was being overprotective. Now I wondered if he'd seen red flags I'd been too infatuated to notice. This isn't about Jake, I said slowly. This is about you tracking my every move while hiding money in secret accounts. I already told you. Birthday surprise. Right. I looked at the banking app still open on my laptop. Sarah, I want access to that account. Today. Absolutely not. Then I want you to transfer the money back to our savings. Right now. Her mask slipped completely then. Gone was the reasonable wife trying to explain away misunderstandings. In its place stood someone I barely recognized, someone with cold, calculating eyes and a set jaw that meant she was done pretending. You want to see that money again, she said quietly. Then you'll start acting like a husband instead of a spoiled child. Beginning with giving Jessica that keychain. The connection between the keychain and the money hit me like a physical blow. She was holding our savings hostage over a piece of leather and brass that meant everything to me and nothing to her. You're serious, I said, staring at her. You're actually blackmailing me with our own money. Sarah's expression didn't soften. I'm asking you to do one simple thing to keep peace in this marriage. Give Jessica the keychain, and we can move past this whole misunderstanding about the finances. Misunderstanding? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah, you've been tracking my location in real time and hiding thousands of dollars. That's not a misunderstanding, that's deception. It's marriage maintenance, she snapped. Someone has to keep track of our finances since you clearly can't be trusted to. To what? Buy a sandwich without GPS surveillance. She moved closer, her voice dropping to that manipulative whisper again. Michael, you're being dramatic. Couples manage money together. They make decisions together. They compromise together. All I'm asking for is one tiny gesture of goodwill. I picked up the keychain, feeling its familiar weight in my palm. Dad had carried this through a war zone. He'd held it the day he told me Mom was sick. It had been in his pocket when the paramedics found him on his office floor. This isn't tiny to me. But it could be, Sarah said, her tone shifting to something almost pleading. That's what love is, Michael, making small sacrifices for each other. I sacrifice for you all the time. Like what? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Like staying home instead of going out with my friends when you want to have your quiet nights. Like managing our entire financial life so you don't have to worry about it. Like putting up with your family always calling and interfering in our business. Each example felt like a revelation. Staying home on nights I'd never asked her to stay home. Managing finances by hiding money and tracking my every move. Putting up with my family who loved me and wanted to stay connected. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Haven't heard from you in weeks, sweetheart. Hope you're doing well. When was the last time I'd called my mother without Sarah making some comment about being a mama's boy or spending too much time on family drama? I need some air, I said, pocketing the keychain and heading for the door. Where are you going? The sharpness in Sarah's voice made me pause. For a walk. We're not finished talking about this. I turned back to look at her, really look at her. When had she become someone who thought she could dictate whether I was allowed to leave my own house? Yeah, we are. At least for now. Michael, if you walk out that door without resolving this, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? She lifted her chin, and I saw something cold and calculating flash in her eyes. I'll call your office tomorrow. Tell them you've been having some kind of breakdown. Explain that you might need some time off to deal with your emotional instability. The threat hung in the air between us like poison. She would sabotage my career over this. Actually sabotage my job because I wouldn't give away my dead father's keychain to her friend. You wouldn't. Try me. I stared at her, this woman I'd married, this person I'd shared a bed with for 3 years, and realized I didn't know her at all. The Sarah I'd fallen in love with wouldn't have threatened my livelihood over a keychain. She wouldn't have hidden money or tracked my movements or made me feel guilty for talking to my own brother. Had that Sarah ever existed? Or had I been so desperate to believe in the fairy tale that I'd ignored who she really was? My phone rang. Tom this time. I'd forgotten we were supposed to confirm Saturday's plans. Answer it, Sarah said suddenly. But put it on speaker. What? I want to hear what you tell him about tonight. I want to make sure you're not spreading lies about me. The demand was so outrageous, so controlling, that something inside me finally snapped. I answered the phone and walked straight out the front door. Mike? You there? Tom's voice sounded distant as I stood on my front porch, watching Sarah through the window. She was pacing the kitchen like a caged animal, her phone already in her hand. Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, just dealing with some stuff at home. Everything okay? You sound weird. I walked down the driveway, putting more distance between myself and the house. Tom, can I ask you something? When you and Lisa have disagreements about money, how do you handle it? There was a pause. I mean, we talk about it. Why? Do you ask permission before spending money? Like, small amounts? Permission. Tom laughed. Dude, I bought a $70 video game last week without even mentioning it to Lisa. It's my money too. What's going on? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Sarah. I declined it, but immediately another call came through. Then another. Mike, someone's blowing up your phone, Tom said. It's Sarah. We're having a fight. Must be some fight. Want me to let you go? I looked back at the house. Sarah had moved to the front window and was watching me through the glass, her phone still pressed to her ear. The sight sent a chill down my spine. Actually, no. Tell me about Saturday. What time did you want to meet? 2 o'clock at Murphy's, like we planned. But listen, if you need to deal with. 2 o'clock is perfect, I said, louder than necessary. I wanted Sarah to hear that I was making plans without consulting her. I'll see you then. Okay. Mike, seriously, is everything alright? You're acting strange. My phone buzzed with a text, come inside now. We need to finish this conversation. Another buzz, I'm serious, Michael. Don't make this worse than it already is. Another, if you embarrass me by airing our private business to your friends, you'll regret it. Tom, I have to ask you something else. Has Sarah ever said anything to you about? I don't know, about me being irresponsible with money. Sarah barely talks to me, man. She's always been kind of cold when I'm around. Lisa's mentioned it too, says Sarah acts like she's doing us a favor by letting us hang out with you. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, letting us? Come on, Mike. Every time we make plans, you have to check with her first. Every time we're out, you're texting her constantly. It's like you need permission for everything. Lisa and I have talked about it. My friends have been watching my marriage crumble from the outside while I've been too deep in it to see what was happening. The embarrassment was crushing. I didn't realize it was that obvious. Hey, no judgment, okay? Relationships are complicated. But, Mike, you used to be the guy who'd call at midnight wanting to go on spontaneous road trips. Now you won't order a beer without checking your phone first. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Sarah, it was a number I didn't recognize. I almost declined it, then thought better of it. Hello. Hi, this is Jessica. Sarah's friend. Her voice was sickeningly sweet. I hope you don't mind me calling. Sarah gave me your number. I just wanted to thank you personally for the keychain. She told me you decided to let me have it after all. It means so much to me. The manipulation was breathtaking. Sarah had told her friend the decision was already made, backing me into a corner where saying no would make me look like I was going back on my word. Actually, Jessica, there's been a misunderstanding. Oh. Her voice turned sharp. But Sarah said, she said you were excited about the idea. That you wanted to do something nice for me. Through the window, I could see Sarah watching my face, a slight smile playing at her lips. She'd orchestrated this perfectly, gotten her friend invested in a lie so I'd be the bad guy for telling the truth. I need to call you back, I told Jessica, hanging up before she could respond. Tom was still on the other line. Who was that? Sarah's friend. This is about to get a lot more complicated. My phone immediately started ringing again, Jessica calling back. I declined it and turned to Tom. Listen, I have to go deal with this mess, but Tom. Saturday at 2. I'll be there no matter what. Are you sure? Because if Sarah's going to give you grief about it, she can give me all the grief she wants. I'm done asking permission to see my friends. I hung up and walked back toward the house, my mind racing. Sarah had already told Jessica the keychain was hers. That meant she'd been planning this conversation for days, maybe weeks. The demand hadn't been spontaneous, it had been a calculated move in whatever game she was playing. The front door opened before I reached it. Well. Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed. I hope you told Jessica you were just having a bad day and that you'll drop the keychain off tomorrow. Actually, I told her there was a misunderstanding. Sarah's face hardened. What kind of misunderstanding? The kind where you promised her something that isn't yours to give away. Michael, Jessica is excited about this. She's already texted 3 of her friends about how thoughtful we are. If you back out now, you'll humiliate both of us. There it was, the social pressure designed to make me fold. How many times had she used our reputation, our image as a couple, to manipulate me into doing what she wanted? Then you should have asked me before making promises. Sarah stepped closer, lowering her voice to that dangerous whisper. I'm trying to help you here. Jessica's husband is a partner at Morrison & Associates. The same firm your company contracts with for legal work. Do you really want to make an enemy of someone who could influence your career? The threat was subtle but clear. Give up the keychain or face professional consequences through her friend's network. How long had she been building these webs of social and professional pressure around me? My phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. I'm so confused. Sarah said you were happy to give me the keychain, but now you're saying there's a misunderstanding. Did I do something wrong? I showed Sarah the message. Fix this. Tell her the truth, that you made a promise you couldn't keep. I'm not doing anything. You created this mess by going back on your word. I never gave my word. You gave it to me, which is the same thing. In a healthy marriage, spouses present a united front. The gaslighting was so smooth I almost got caught in it again. For a second, I wondered if I was being unreasonable. Then I remembered the secret account, the location tracking, the threats about my job. Sarah, I want you to transfer that $3,000 back to our savings account. Tonight. She laughed, actually laughed. Or what? Or I start making some calls of my own. To who? Your brother. Your drinking buddy Tom. Go ahead, Michael. Tell them all about how your terrible wife manages your finances and expects you to be considerate of her friends. See how much sympathy you get. But she misunderstood my threat. I wasn't talking about calling family or friends. I'm talking about calling the bank, I said quietly. About that account in your maiden name. About whether joint account holders can unilaterally transfer funds without the other party's knowledge or consent. Sarah's confident expression faltered slightly. That money is still accessible to both of us. Is it? Because I don't have the account number, the routing number, or even the bank name. For all I know, you've been draining our savings for months. That's ridiculous. I would never. My phone rang again. This time it was Jake, probably calling back because our earlier conversation had been cut short. I answered it without hesitation. Jake, I'm glad you called back. I need to ask you something about banking regulations. Sarah's face went white. Banking regulations? Jake sounded confused. Mike, what's going on over there? If someone transfers money from a joint account to a private account without telling their spouse, is that legal? Jesus, Mike. Are you saying Sarah's been hiding money? I looked directly at Sarah as I answered. I'm saying I found $3,000 missing from our savings, transferred to an account I can't access. That's financial abuse, plain and simple, Jake said immediately. Lisa deals with this stuff in her family law practice all the time. You need to document everything, account statements, transfer records, all of it. Sarah was shaking her head frantically, mouthing, no, at me. I'm already on it, I told Jake, opening my laptop again. I'll call you back in a few minutes. I hung up and began taking screenshots of everything, the tracking settings, the account transfers, the purchase histories. Sarah watched in growing panic as I documented months of financial manipulation. Michael, stop. You're misunderstanding all of this. But I was finally understanding perfectly. I saved the last screenshot and closed the laptop, my hand surprisingly steady now that I had evidence of everything. The documentation felt like armor, proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't the financially irresponsible husband Sarah had spent months convincing me I was. You can't show those to anyone, Sarah said, her voice tight with panic. Those are private financial records. They're joint account records. I have every right to them. She moved toward the laptop like she was considering grabbing it, then seemed to think better of it. Michael, you're destroying our marriage over money. Is that really who you want to be? The accusation hit exactly where she intended it to, my fear of being the selfish, unreasonable one. But this time, instead of the familiar guilt spiral, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. I'm not destroying anything, Sarah. I'm just finally seeing what was already broken. My phone buzzed with yet another call from Jessica. Before I could decline it, Sarah lunged forward and snatched the phone from my hand. Jessica, hi. It's Sarah, she said, her voice instantly switching to that bright, fake cheerfulness. I'm so sorry about the confusion. Michael's just having a really stressful week at work, and he's not thinking clearly about the keychain situation. I reached for the phone, but Sarah stepped away, continuing her performance. No, he definitely wants you to have it. He's just being sentimental because it was his father's. You know how men get about these things. She laughed, the sound grating against my nerves. We'll drop it off tomorrow morning, I promise. Give me the phone, I said firmly. Sarah held up one finger, signaling me to wait. What's that? Oh, he's just tired. Yes, I'll make sure he gets some rest. Okay, see you tomorrow. She hung up and handed me the phone with a triumphant smile. There. Crisis averted. Jessica understands that you're under stress. You just promised her something that isn't happening. Michael, be practical. Jessica's already told people about the keychain. Her husband mentioned it to his business partners today. Apparently he thought it was such a generous gesture that he's considering some kind of partnership opportunity with your company. Do you really want to torpedo that over a piece of old leather? The web of social and professional obligations was tightening around me like a noose. Every move Sarah made seemed calculated to increase the stakes, to make saying no more costly than just giving in. But something had shifted in me during the past hour. Maybe it was seeing the evidence of her manipulation laid out in black and white. Maybe it was remembering my father's voice, his lessons about knowing where you stand. Or maybe I was just finally tired of being afraid of my own wife. Let me tell you what's going to happen, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. First, you're going to call Jessica back and tell her the truth, that you made a promise you couldn't keep. Second, you're going to transfer that $3,000 back to our joint savings tonight. And third, you're going to remove the tracking from my debit card. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Or what? Or I call Jake back, and then I call a lawyer. You wouldn't. But there was uncertainty in her voice now. Try me. We stared at each other across the kitchen, and I realized this was the first time in our entire marriage that I'd drawn a line in the sand and meant it. The first time I'd been willing to face real consequences instead of just avoiding conflict. Sarah's phone rang in her hand, probably Jessica calling back with more questions. She declined the call without taking her eyes off me. Michael, you're making a huge mistake. If you humiliate me in front of Jessica, if you make me look like a liar, there's no coming back from that. Then I guess you'd better figure out how to tell the truth. The standoff stretched between us for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Sarah's phone kept buzzing, Jessica calling back, probably confused about the mixed signals she was getting. Each buzz seemed to wind Sarah tighter, her jaw clenching harder with every ignored ring. Fine, she said finally, her voice ice cold. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. She walked to our home office, the one she'd claimed as her own months ago when she said she needed dedicated space for managing our finances, and returned with a folder I'd never seen before. She spread the contents across the kitchen table like a poker player laying down a winning hand. Bank statements. Credit reports. A detailed spreadsheet that made my blood run cold. What is this? I asked, though part of me already knew. This is what financial responsibility actually looks like, Sarah said, her finger tracing down columns of numbers. Every late payment you made before we got married. Every maxed out credit card. Every overdraft fee. Should I continue? I stared at the papers, recognizing my old financial mistakes laid out in excruciating detail. The credit card debt I'd racked up in college. The student loan payment I'd missed during that month I was between jobs. The overdraft from when I'd miscalculated my checking balance by $40. All of it from before we'd even met. You ran a credit check on me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I ran a background check, she corrected. Financial, professional, personal. Before I married you, Michael. Before I trusted you with my future. The violation felt physical, like she'd reached into my chest and squeezed something vital. When? After our third date. You seemed too good to be true, so I decided to verify. She flipped to another page, one covered with printed emails and social media screenshots. Your ex-girlfriend Melissa had some very interesting things to say about your spending habits. Apparently you borrowed $300 from her for a fantasy football buy-in and conveniently forgot to pay it back. My mouth went dry. The fantasy football thing had been a misunderstanding. Melissa and I had split up before the season ended, and in the chaos of the breakup, I'd genuinely forgotten about the money. I tried to pay her back months later, but she'd already moved across the country and changed her number. I tried to pay her back. According to her, you never even acknowledged the debt. Just like you're trying to avoid acknowledging reality now. Sarah's smile was razor sharp. Do you see the pattern here, Michael? Poor financial decisions. Broken promises. Taking money that isn't really yours. She was weaponizing my past against me, using my old mistakes to justify her current control. But what made it worse was the nagging fear that maybe she was right. Maybe I couldn't be trusted with money. Maybe the tracking and control were necessary because I was exactly as irresponsible as she said. That was years ago, I managed. I was different then. Were you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the same guy who thinks rules don't apply to him. The same guy who makes commitments he doesn't keep. She tapped the keychain sitting on the table. Just like you're doing now with Jessica. My phone rang. Jake again. But this time, when I reached for it, Sarah's hand clamped down on my wrist. Don't you dare, she hissed. Don't you dare drag your family into this and make me look like the villain when you're the one with a history of financial problems. Her grip was tight enough to hurt, and something about the physical restraint snapped me back to reality. This woman had investigated my past like I was a criminal. She tracked down my ex-girlfriend to gather ammunition against me. She'd been building a case against my character since the beginning of our relationship. Let go of me, I said quietly. Promise me you won't call Jake. Let go of me, Sarah. She held on for another second, her eyes searching my face for signs of capitulation. When she didn't find them, she released my wrist and stepped back. I answered Jake's call. Finally, he said. I've been trying to reach you. Lisa wants to know if you need somewhere to stay tonight. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline I wasn't sure I was ready to grab. The question caught me completely off guard. Stay somewhere. Jake, I'm not, this isn't that serious. But even as I said it, I could feel Sarah's eyes boring into me from across the kitchen. She'd spread those financial documents across our table like evidence in a trial, and suddenly our home felt less like a sanctuary and more like a courtroom where I was permanently cast as the defendant. Mike, Lisa's dealt with situations like this before, Jake continued, his voice gentle but insistent. Financial control, tracking, threats about your job, that's not normal marriage stuff. That's abuse. It's complicated, I said, walking toward the living room to get some distance from Sarah. We're just having a disagreement about boundaries. A disagreement? Jake's tone sharpened. Dude, she's tracking your location in real time and threatening your career. What kind of disagreement involves GPS surveillance? Behind me, I heard Sarah moving around the kitchen, probably putting away her folder of ammunition. The sound of papers rustling made my skin crawl. How long had she been sitting on that information, waiting for the right moment to deploy it? Look, I appreciate the offer, but I think we can work this out, I said, though the words felt hollow even to me. Can you? Because from what you told me earlier, this has been going on for months. When's the last time you did something, anything, without checking with her first? The question hit like a physical blow because I couldn't answer it. When was the last time? I'd asked permission to meet Tom for drinks. I'd apologized for buying a book. I'd felt guilty about talking to my own brother on the phone. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Jake's voice was firm now. Mike, remember when Dad used to say that thing about knowing when you're in quicksand? I did remember. Dad's advice when we were kids, the longer you stand still and debate whether you're really sinking, the deeper you get. Sometimes you have to start moving before you're sure which direction is safe. I remember. You're in quicksand, brother. And every minute you spend trying to convince yourself this is normal, you're sinking deeper. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Jessica again, probably wondering why she was getting mixed messages about a keychain that should have been a simple gift. I let it go to voicemail, but the notification reminded me how quickly Sarah had escalated this situation. How she'd involved her friend, created social pressure, threatened professional consequences, all over a piece of leather and brass that meant everything to me and nothing to her. I need to think, I told Jake. Okay, but Mike. The offer stands. Lisa's making up the guest room just in case. I hung up and returned to the kitchen, where Sarah was loading the dishwasher with unnecessary force, each plate clattering against the others like punctuation marks in an argument she was having with herself. Well, she said without turning around. Did you tell your brother all about your terrible, controlling wife? I told him I needed to think. She slammed the glass into the dishwasher hard enough that I was surprised it didn't shatter. Think about what, exactly? About whether you want to stay married to someone who cares about your financial future. About whether you can handle being in an adult relationship that requires compromise. Her voice was rising with each word, taking on a hysterical edge I'd never heard before. Think about whether you'd rather run back to your family every time we have a disagreement. Because that's what children do, Michael. Children run to mommy and daddy when they don't get their way. The accusation stung because part of me wondered if she was right. Was I overreacting? Was this really abuse, or was I just not cut out for the kind of partnership Sarah wanted? But then my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Haven't heard from you in weeks, sweetheart. Hope you're doing well. When had I stopped calling my mother because it was easier than dealing with Sarah's comments about being a mama's boy? When had I started measuring every relationship in my life against Sarah's approval? I'm going for a drive, I said, grabbing my keys. Sarah spun around, her face flushed. Where? I don't know yet. Michael, if you leave this house tonight without resolving this, don't bother coming back. The ultimatum hung between us like a loaded gun. Choose her version of resolution, give up the keychain, accept the financial control, stop questioning her methods, or lose everything we'd built together. I looked at her standing there in our kitchen, surrounded by the life we created, and realized I didn't recognize either of us anymore. I walked to the front door, my keys feeling heavier than usual in my hand. The keychain caught the hallway light, and for a moment I could almost feel Dad's presence, steady, unwavering, the kind of man who never backed down when he knew he was right. Michael. Sarah's voice behind me was different now, softer. Desperate. Please don't do this. We can figure it out. I turned back to see her standing in the kitchen doorway, and for a split second she looked like the woman I'd married. Vulnerable. Scared. Human. Transfer the money back, Sarah. Remove the tracking. Call Jessica and tell her the truth. I can't. Her voice cracked. You don't understand what you're asking me to do. I'm asking you to treat me like your husband instead of a suspect. But what if, she stopped herself, pressing her lips together like she'd almost revealed something crucial. What if what? Sarah's hands twisted together, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. What if you leave me? The confession hit me like a physical blow. What? What if I give you freedom with money and you realize you don't need me? What if I stop keeping track and you just disappear? Like my father did. The pieces suddenly clicked into place with devastating clarity. Sarah's father had walked out when she was 12, leaving her mother with massive debt and no warning. She told me the story on our second date, but I'd never connected it to her behavior now. Sarah, I'm not your father. But you could be. Tears were streaming down her face now. You could decide this is too much trouble and find someone easier. Someone who doesn't ask questions about money or want to know where you are. The manipulation was so subtle I almost missed it, using her trauma to justify her control, making me the villain for wanting basic privacy and respect. But underneath the tears, I caught something else in her expression. Calculation. Like she was gauging whether this display of vulnerability would work. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Sarah, I'm getting confused signals about the keychain. Can you call me? She's texting you now, I said, showing Sarah the message. Sarah wiped her eyes and immediately straightened, the vulnerable woman disappearing like a mask being removed. Because she doesn't understand that you're having some kind of crisis. Give me the phone. No. Michael, I am trying to save our marriage and protect your reputation. Jessica's husband is meeting with your company's CEO next week. If this gets back to them that you're unstable. How do you know about Tom's meeting with our CEO? Sarah froze. What? You said Jessica's husband is meeting with my CEO. How would you know about confidential business meetings? The silence stretched between us, heavy with implication. Sarah's face had gone pale again, and I watched her scramble for an explanation that wouldn't reveal whatever she'd just accidentally admitted to. Jessica mentioned it, she said finally. Her husband talks about work sometimes. But I knew our CEO's calendar. I knew because I'd been part of the planning committee for next week's partnership discussions. And there was no meeting scheduled with Morrison and Associates. Sarah, what aren't you telling me? Before she could answer, my phone rang. Not Jessica this time, not Jake. A number I didn't recognize with our local area code. I answered cautiously. Hello. Is this Michael Chin? The voice was professional, unfamiliar. This is Michael. This is Detective Rodriguez with the Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating some irregularities with joint account transfers in your area. Could we schedule a time to speak with you tomorrow? The phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hand. Detective Rodriguez. Financial Crimes Unit. The words echoed in my skull while Sarah stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I managed. We're investigating some suspicious account activity in the area, joint accounts with unauthorized transfers, identity theft, that sort of thing. Your name came up in our database. Nothing serious at this point, just routine follow-up. Sarah was shaking her head frantically, mouthing, hang up, at me. What kind of database? I asked, ignoring her. Banks are required to report certain types of transactions to us. Large transfers between accounts with different names, unusual spending patterns, that kind of thing. Could you come in tomorrow around 10? My mind was racing. Had the bank flagged Sarah's transfer to her private account? Or was this about something else entirely? Yes, I can come in. Can you tell me what specific activity triggered this? I'd rather discuss the details in person, if that's all right. Do you have our address? After I hung up, Sarah immediately launched into damage control mode. Michael, you cannot go to that meeting. Why not? Because they'll twist everything around. They'll make it look like we're criminals when we're just a married couple managing our finances. Her voice was getting higher, more desperate. Do you have any idea what this could do to my career? To both our careers? Something about her panic felt disproportionate. If this was really just about the $3,000 she transferred, why was she acting like we were facing federal charges? Sarah, if everything's legitimate, then we have nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about? She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Michael, I work in financial planning. If there's even a hint of impropriety, I'll lose my license. We'll lose everything. My phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. I'm really confused. Can someone please call me back? Then another from Tom. Hey man, weird question. Did you know some woman called our office asking about your employment status? My blood turned to ice. Sarah, did you call my office today? What? No, of course not. I showed her Tom's message. Then who called asking about my employment? Sarah's face crumpled. I don't know. Maybe it was Jessica's husband doing due diligence for that partnership thing. You're being paranoid. But pieces were clicking together in my mind like a puzzle I'd been too close to see. The mysterious meeting with our CEO that didn't exist. The call to my office. Sarah's disproportionate panic about a routine police inquiry. Sarah, how much money is actually missing? Missing? Nothing's missing. I told you, it's your birthday. How much? My voice cut through her protests like a blade. She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. 7,000. 7,000. Not 3. I'd only found one transfer because I hadn't looked far enough back. Jesus Christ, Sarah. It's not what you think. What I think is that you've been systematically draining our accounts while tracking my every purchase to make sure I didn't notice. What I think is that you just lied to my face about the amount. My phone was buzzing constantly now, Jessica, my mother, Tom again. But all I could focus on was the woman standing across from me, this stranger who'd been sleeping next to me for 3 years while apparently planning God knows what. Michael, I can explain everything, but first you have to promise me you won't go to that police meeting. I'm not promising you anything. Then you're choosing to destroy our marriage over money. The accusation hung between us, but this time it didn't land. Because I was finally starting to understand that our marriage had been destroyed long before tonight, I'd just been too controlled, too manipulated, too afraid to see it. I stared at Sarah, processing the magnitude of her admission. $7,000. Months of systematic theft while she'd made me feel guilty about buying lunch. I need to see all of it, I said quietly. Every account, every transfer, everything. Michael, please. Show me. Now. Or I walk out that door and don't come back. Sarah's face cycled through emotions like she was trying on masks, desperation, anger, calculation. Finally, she seemed to settle on resignation. Fine. But you have to understand, I was protecting us. She disappeared into the office again and returned with her laptop. Her fingers trembled as she logged into an account I'd never seen before. The screen filled with transactions that made my stomach drop. It wasn't just our money. Sarah, whose account is this? It's complicated. The account showed deposits from multiple sources, our joint savings, yes, but also transfers from other accounts with names I didn't recognize. Thompson. Williams. Rodriguez. The same Rodriguez who just called me. These other names, who are they? Sarah's silence stretched too long. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Clients. Clients from your financial planning business. Former clients. The room seemed to tilt around me. Sarah, what did you do? I didn't steal anything. The words exploded out of her. I managed their portfolios. When they stopped responding to calls, stopped checking statements, I just maintained the accounts. Maintained them how? By transferring inactive funds to a managed account. My account. I was going to give it back if they ever asked. My phone buzzed with another call. Detective Rodriguez again. This time, I answered immediately. Mr. Chin. I'm glad I caught you. We've had some developments in our investigation. Could you come in tonight instead of tomorrow? Tonight? We've received additional reports. This appears to be part of a larger financial fraud scheme. Time is somewhat critical. Sarah was pulling at my sleeve, shaking her head frantically. The desperation in her eyes was real now, not the calculated vulnerability from earlier, but genuine terror. I'll be there in an hour, I told the detective. Actually, Mr. Chen, is your wife available as well? Sarah Chen, maiden name Rodriguez. The connection hit me like lightning. Rodriguez. Detective Rodriguez. The account showed a transfer from someone named Rodriguez. Detective, is Sarah, are you related to? Sarah Rodriguez is my sister. She's been stealing from her clients for 8 months, and we believe she's been using joint marital accounts to launder the money. The phone slipped from my hand. Sarah's own brother was investigating her for financial fraud, and I'd been the unwitting accomplice, the joint account holder whose name legitimized her money laundering operation. You married me for my bank account, I whispered. Sarah was sobbing now, but I felt nothing but cold clarity. Michael, I was going to pay it all back. I just needed time to rebuild the portfolios, to make the money work. How much, Sarah? How much of other people's money did you steal? I didn't steal it. I was managing it. How much? 200,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $200,000 in stolen money, laundered through accounts with my name on them. My signature on the banking documents. My social security number linked to every fraudulent transaction. My phone was ringing again, but this time it was Jake. Mike, whatever's happening over there, you need to get out. Now. Lisa just got a call from someone asking about your legal representation. Someone's building a case. I looked at Sarah, this woman I thought I knew, this criminal who'd made me an accessory to fraud while lecturing me about $28 protein powder. Jake, call me a lawyer. The best one you know. Already did. He's waiting for you at his office. I grabbed my wallet and headed for the door. Michael, please. Sarah's voice cracked with genuine panic. If you leave now, if you don't help me fix this, we'll both go to prison. I turned back one last time, my father's keychain heavy in my pocket. We're already there, Sarah. I'm just finally ready to break out. The lawyer Jake found was named David Kim, and his office felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos I just escaped. He listened without judgment as I laid out everything, the tracking, the hidden accounts, the stolen money, Sarah's admission about the client funds. The good news is that you're clearly a victim here, David said, sliding a document across his desk. The bad news is that your wife used your joint accounts to legitimize stolen funds. We need to act fast to protect you. I signed papers separating me from all joint accounts, filed a formal complaint about the unauthorized transfers, and provided everything I'd documented. David made calls while I sat there, still processing that my marriage had been an elaborate con designed to give Sarah access to legitimate banking credentials. Detective Rodriguez wants to meet with you first thing tomorrow, David said. He's been building this case for months. Apparently, several of Sarah's former clients are elderly people who trusted her with their retirement funds. The magnitude of her crimes made my head spin. While I'd been agonizing over buying a sandwich, she'd been stealing life savings from senior citizens. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, I'm at a hotel. Please don't let them arrest me. I'll pay everything back. I showed David the message. Don't respond, he advised. And Michael? Change your locks tonight. Close any accounts she has access to. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I drove back to the house, my house now, and found it empty. Sarah had cleared out her belongings with impressive efficiency. The office was stripped bare, her laptop gone, even the folder with my old financial records had disappeared. But she'd left something behind. On the kitchen counter sat the keychain, Dad's compass, with a note scrawled in her handwriting, keep your precious memories. Hope they're worth destroying both our lives. I picked up the keychain, feeling its familiar weight. Dad had always said a compass doesn't just show you where you're going, sometimes it shows you where you are. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood. Over the next few weeks, the pieces fell into place. Sarah was arrested trying to board a flight to Costa Rica with $40,000 in cash. Detective Rodriguez, her own brother, had been tracking her for months, hoping she'd come clean before he had to arrest her. The investigation revealed she'd been running variations of this scheme for years, using romantic relationships to access legitimate banking channels. I was cleared of all charges within a month, but the emotional aftermath took longer to process. Jake and Lisa helped me change the locks, close the compromised accounts, and start rebuilding my credit. Tom and I had that beer we planned, and I apologized for years of asking permission for everything. Just promise me one thing, Tom said, raising his glass. Next time you want to grab lunch, you grab lunch. No permission required. The divorce papers came through on a Tuesday. I was at my desk, working late, when Jake called with the news. It's official. You're a free man. I looked out my office window at the city lights below, then pulled Dad's keychain from my pocket. The compass needle pointed steadily north, unwavering despite everything that had tried to knock it off course. 6 months later, I met Detective Rodriguez for coffee. He thanked me for my cooperation in the case and shared that Sarah had been sentenced to 5 years for fraud and money laundering. You know what the ironic part is? He said. She really did love you. That was the first time she'd ever shown genuine emotion during one of her schemes. Doesn't excuse what she did, but I thought you should know. I thanked him and walked home to my apartment, smaller than the house I'd shared with Sarah, but entirely mine. No tracking, no surveillance, no asking permission to exist. That night, I called my mother for the first time in months, then talked to Jake for an hour about nothing important. I ordered pizza without checking a budget app, bought a book online because the title looked interesting, and fell asleep reading in my own bed. Dad's compass sat on my nightstand, pointing true north. Finally, so was I.